Good evening, and welcome back to the one that Celtic fans view. Obviously, the media conference has been today with Brendan Rodgers and the one and only Liam Scales. And first of all, when I listen to Liam Scales, he was asked about the disappointment of last week. Of course, they're going to ask about last week. There's nothing else to do, better to do. They're not forward thinking. They're not they're not going to ask loads of questions about the game this weekend. They're going to ask for a reaction to try and get some headlines about what happened last week.
Yeah, 100%. It was a disappointing result. Obviously, things didn't go our way, and it was sort of taken out of our hands a little bit. But now it's a different competition this week, so it's completely fresh mindset and going into it now.
Do you expect things maybe to open up a bit more, given it's a cup knockout?
No. Potentially, but I think they'll also probably be a bit cautious. Like they'll try and stay in the game, and their usual sort of they'll be hard to break down. I'd say more so than them opening up, just because they want to stay in the game and keep it going for as long as they can.
Yep, they'll stay in the game as long as they can. So, I mean, it's going to be one of those boring games at Hampden that Celtic are going to have to just go out and all-out attack. Will Livingston change their tactics? One of the interesting things that it was asked was a question about the handball situation with Tomoki Iwata. Now, we've all seen it, and it should never have, well, as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't have been a penalty. He was asked, Tomoki Iwata didn't even know it was him that the penalty was awarded against. That is the most bizarre thing ever. He didn't know that the penalty was actually awarded against him until half time. Liam Scales was asked what the players thought about the situation.
Some might be. I'm not really, to be honest. Like, it surprised me watching it back, especially. Like, no one even on the pitch really knew it happened. Tomoki didn't even know until half time that it was given against him. I don't even, it might have been even given against Ali. I'm not sure myself, but it was surprising. But that's football.
Is it something you talk about in training, especially as defenders? You got to defend these days with your arms behind your back. You have to watch what you're doing when you're jumping.
Yeah, I understand. I've sort of taken that arms behind the back approach when you're blocking shots or pressing an opponent, because you know if they shoot and it's going towards a goal and hits your arm or hand, it's a handball. But physically it's difficult to jump without using your arms to get yourself up, and like when there's contact involved between players, your limbs sort of are pushed different ways. They react differently. So sometimes it's out of your control, and it's really hard to defend naturally when these things are in your mind. But we just have to sort of get on with it.
We do have to get on with it. And the thing is whether it's a deliberate handball or not should be then brought into play. It's not the fact that it's a handball. Is it deliberate? Is his arm in an unnatural position? Well, what caused his arm to be in an unnatural position? It hit the back of his arm, for goodness sake. Come on. This FA are at it. We all know they're at it. I ken it. You ken it. Even Patsy kens it. Brendan Rodgers was then asked in the later press conference about Liel Abada situation, and they were trying to get some dirt on the whole Liel Abada situation, asking Brendan all sorts of questions about, had he been talking to him, this, that, and the next thing, and we'll listen to what Brendan had to say, because it's a little bit interesting.
Whatever doubts he had in the summer, he was really happy to commit, signed a new deal,
yep.
And then now through probably no fault of his own or the club's, it's he then has had to leave to take his career elsewhere. So I spoke to Liel on Monday evening. We had him around the house and just, because I knew he was probably going to be travelling the next morning, but desperately sad, because I really, really was looking forward to working with him over a period of time, see if we could improve his game and develop his game. And but if you look back, he's created some wonderful memories here, Celtic, and I'm sure Glasgow will have a big place in his heart, and we wish him all the very best over now in America.
Just in terms of that, talk about his career that he's had, came here at 19.
One of the questions he was asked, which I thought was quite cheeky, but I wish Brendan Rodgers would just come out and say, well, look, there's obviously been outside influence from outside Scotland suggesting that he moves. He's found it hard to cope with that. And this nonsense that people keep on saying online, the Green Brigade pushed him out the door. He knew the situation with Celtic and the Palestine flags way before this happened. He decided to sign a new contract in the summer before September, the October 7th thing happened. Right? There's been outside influence from outside the club and back home in Israel that's pushed Lior Labada out the door, and he's found it more and more difficult to stay at Celtic. Hence the reason that he's now been sold. Anyway, we move on from that and we'll listen to a bit more of what Brendan Rodgers has to say.
A role model to other players, perhaps other wingers, or just anyone that comes to Celtic, and this is what can happen. You can play loads of games, score big goals in Europe, games against Rangers.
Of course you can. Look at it. See, when the press come out with questions like that, does it show you that what you can do when you come to Celtic? Look at over the last 10 years at the players that have came to Celtic and went on for big fees. Look at the players that have came to Celtic and went on to bigger leagues. What an absolutely ridiculous question to try and just see and try and prod away at Brendan just to see if there's any transfer information that he might be able to slip out. And obviously, as a professional football coach, he's never going to release any of that information, and especially not to a Scottish mainstream media person on a Friday afternoon. Now, next up, he was asked about the one and only Bernabe, who has now left Celtic, who, as far as Brendan Rodgers says, that's him away. That's him away. And that's not something I had to say, because it's interesting that he says that that's him away.
Well, Bernard's gone to, again, really, really good professional. Never gave us a minute's problem whilst I've been here. Trained hard every day, but again needs to and wants to go and play. And obviously his chances, we can only be open and honest and say that it'd be limited for him here. So that chance to go to Brazil, and it's the team he's gone with as an Argentinian coach, and he can go and play and play hopefully regular football.
Hopefully play regular football. So Bernabe was that far out of the team that he's basically just turned around the gaffer, and at least he's been honest. And Brendan did say that he was going to have to sit down in December with players and just have difficult conversations with them. One of them was Gustav Lagerbielke, and Gustav Lagerbielke was obviously in on the bench the other evening, and he is going to be in the squad against this weekend by the looks of it. Now, obviously, we knew that Callum McGregor was going to be out for a couple of games. We did talk about that during the week, but there's another breaking story today that is coming out of Celtic Park that people inside Celtic Park consider a disaster that they don't have the option to buy Adam Idah. Adam Idah obviously moved from Norwich and on loan until the end of the season. Norwich, it's been suggested that Norwich now want to sell the player. They want to sanction a permanent exit from Carroll Road this summer. Is that the main reason why the one and only Mark Lowell had to leave the building? Celtic, obviously, you would have thought with the player being at Celtic, a player can force his way to get to any club. When you look at it, any player can turn around and say, no, I don't want to go to that club. If Adam Idah wants to stay at Celtic and he wants to play for Celtic, and Celtic want him at the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of speculation and stories come out about this in the next day or so. So keep an eye on that one. But I think even if they do put him up for sale, I'm sure that Celtic will get their way and they'll get the player. But it all depends on the type of money that they want. Will they try and put his transfer fee up due to his performances at Celtic? Now let's look at some of the pictures that were up for the training today. You've got the terrible trio, I'm going to call them. We've got James Forrest, Tony Ralston, and the one and old Greg Taylor, all looking a bit grim-faced at training today. And then one of the other pictures is obviously Yuki Kobayashi, who's that far out of the Celtic team. It's unbelievable. You've seen the manager talking to the one and only Cameron Carter-Vickers, and then Yang and O giving the manager a high five in the pictures also. But the big thing is Matt O'Reilly and Gustav Lagerbielke, all smiles. And then the Kobayashi one. The Kobayashi one's a strange, but it's obviously still going to be training with the first team, so don't look into that. You're going to get media saying, forgotten men at Celtic, not even getting on the team, but they're at training. Of course they're training with the first team. They're first team players. Anyway, on that note, I hope you'll have a fantastic evening, Celtic fans all around the world. Chucky Allah.